Can you bring the internet inside? The little... Thank you. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Vijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna, this light here, can you turn this light on? Jamuna Tira Banachari. That's what I'm pointing to, that light. This light. I need this light. Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari. Can you turn that off? Can you turn it off? Please turn it off. I can't give class while you're playing that. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paschachadasatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayate Giri Yakripa Tamaham Vande Siguru Dinatarinam Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhuvyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm going to read something that a devotee wanted me to talk about. And it's on the topic, what we've been discussing the last few nights, about self-honesty and just understanding our position, understanding our level of advancement, properly understanding how to achieve Krishna consciousness, rather than pretending to be more Krishna conscious than we are, or sometimes pretending to be less Krishna conscious than we are. We make the mistake both ways. Some devotees think they're more Krishna conscious than they are, and some think they're less Krishna conscious than they are. Right? Have you seen that? Hare Krishna. If you think you're less Krishna conscious than you are, you may not strive for levels of Krishna consciousness you could achieve, thinking you're not qualified or some way limiting yourself. So then you might say, how do I be humble? How can I be humble? And you're telling me I'm thinking I'm less Krishna conscious than I am, and isn't that how I'm supposed to think? Well, in a practical way, no. Because if that's how you think practically, maybe you won't achieve what you can achieve. So it becomes more a lack of objectivity about what you can do. Prabhupada felt unqualified to spread Krishna consciousness in the West. But that feeling, but you wouldn't think by studying his life that he felt that way, because he was very actively spreading Krishna consciousness. So it appears to be a contradiction. Is it going to be too loud with that open? I think we need to close that. You can just make the fan faster. So I have to compete with all the noise. I'm still competing with, oh, now I'm competing with the fan. Can you make it a little slower? Yeah. Just so it's not so noisy, yeah. So, as we know, Srila Prabhupada was very aggressive. He came to America uninvited, So he aggressively spread Krishna consciousness. And at the same time, he felt that he wasn't qualified. So I'm not talking about the kind of feeling unqualified where you don't do anything. You can feel unqualified spiritually and be aggressive materially, and that's what Prabhupada was. But if you feel unqualified materially, then you won't be aggressive. So a lot of times devotees mistake humility for fear. I'm afraid to promote myself because I'm humble. No, not necessarily. If promoting yourself spreads Krishna consciousness, that's what you should do. Right? It's not humble to do nothing. It's just you promote yourself, but you don't promote yourself. It's not promotion from false ego. Prabhupada promoted Krishna consciousness, and in doing so he had to promote himself. But it wasn't that he lacked humility because he was promoting himself, but he was doing it to promote Krishna consciousness. So if I'm not objective about my capacity, then I may shy away from doing things that I could do. Right? So I have to be clear about my position so that I can be firmly grounded in the right service, the right ashram, and act according to my level of Krishna consciousness. One of the problems Prabhupada points out is that sometimes a devotee may be able to act in a Krishna conscious way by the mercy of their guru, and then they begin to think that they're more Krishna conscious than they actually are, when it's actually the grace of their guru that they have this Shakti, that they have some realization or some power to do some seva, which is coming because they please their guru. But then they start to think that they're more advanced than they are. So that's a trap. Anyway, let me read what he says. I'll try to explain. We had discussed his concern, and let me see if I can represent it. When we come to devotional service, we are prone to search out that identity which we think most materially valuable and which will bring the most adoration and honor. The renunciate, the scholar, the leader, the purest of the pure. So he's saying, you come to devotional service with a material identity, and because our material identities are conditioned, then when we come to Krishna consciousness, we may start thinking in the same way. Oh, well, what would be the best thing for me if I become a devotee? Maybe I should become a leader. That would be good for my material identity. Or maybe I should become a renunciate. That would be a good identity to have. Rather than thinking what's best for me, they're thinking in terms of identities which would get them some kind of position or appreciation or honor. So, renunciate, maybe I should study the Shastra, I'll be known as a scholar. Maybe I should become a leader, a manager. Or maybe I should just focus on my sadhana and become pure and be known as a pure devotee. So, the problem is that sometimes it's difficult to distinguish what your motive is, because you may think your motive is pure when it's not. No, I want to become a temple president because I want to serve Prabhupada. Okay, I wouldn't question that. But it may also be you want to be a temple president because you know if you're a temple president, then you have some position in ISKCON. And you really feel you need a position. For whatever reason, you feel you need that. Or if I'm not a renunciate, I won't be appreciated. I'll be looked down upon. If I become a grihasta, maybe people will consider me a failure or whatever it is. So when we're making plans according to maintain some identity materially, then that becomes the prominent idea rather than the service. And it's very common. And another common mistake, which maybe is more innocent, is the mistake that thinking if I become a scholar or a renunciate, or a leader, or whatever else did he say, or whatever it is, it's synonymous with being Krishna conscious. Like once I achieve that position, that's a sign that I'm Krishna conscious. No, it's just a sign that you have that position. That position and your Krishna consciousness may have absolutely nothing to do with one another. So, if I achieve a position, or if I succeed in a service, I shouldn't necessarily think it's a result of my Krishna consciousness. It may be the result of my inspiration to become recognized. But often, devotees mistakenly think if their performance is good, it means they're Krishna conscious. It might mean that, and it may not mean that. It may simply be false ego. You're performing well to get some accolades. Or for whatever other reason that's not Krishna conscious, you're performing well. So, in one sense you can say, but unless I'm getting mercy, unless I'm empowered, how will I be successful in Krishna consciousness? So that is our philosophy. But the success that Prabhupada's talking about is the success in making other people pure devotees. Just being a good manager or distributing a lot of books doesn't mean that you can make other people devotees. So that doesn't necessarily always require Krishna consciousness. It may require material ability. To make someone Krishna conscious, that requires Krishna consciousness. So when Shastra says you can't spread Krishna consciousness unless you're Krishna conscious, it means you can't make other people Krishna conscious. It doesn't mean you can't manage things, or you can't get some position and succeed at that, because you can do that materially. So you can succeed materially for Krishna. So you may be good at something, making money or managing or leading, or you may be a pandit. By nature, you have a good brain for philosophy. So that's not necessarily an indication that you're Krishna conscious. So don't ever think that just because you succeed in some area of your service, it indicates you're Krishna conscious. It may and it may not. It may just indicate that you're good at something. But if you can make somebody Krishna conscious, that's not going to happen by some material power. So when Shastra says you have to be Krishna conscious to spread Krishna consciousness, it means you have to be Krishna conscious to make people Krishna conscious. So the trap is to think that success in my service is synonymous with spiritual advancement, when it may not be. Sometimes we see some new, I don't know if you've seen this in India, but in America we've seen that some new person joins. They've just learned about Krishna consciousness, and they're interested in it, and they want to become devotees, but they're not that advanced. But they're very good at distributing books. And they go out, and in a few days they're distributing more books than the senior seasoned book distributors, because they're just good with people, and they're good salesmen. So it's a sign they're enthusiastic, for sure. It may be a sign that they're determined. It may be a sign of so many things. But it's not necessarily a sign that they're Krishna conscious. It may only be a sign that they just naturally have a talent for doing that service. But they personally may not be able to make people very Krishna conscious. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we shouldn't fall into a misunderstanding that just because I succeed in my service necessarily means I'm Krishna conscious. It may and it may not. So let's read what else. However, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that there are many different types of personalities described in terms of our duties, and makes it clear that one can practice pure bhakti from any of these varnas and ashrams. And you know, I think the word Shudra is almost like a derogatory term. It's almost understood as a derogatory term. Oh, Prabhu, you're just a Shudra. That's like saying you're a rascal or something. And that's not at all what obviously the word Shudra means, and that's not the intention. Ramananda Roy was a Shudra. That was his profession. He had a profession that was categorized within the Shudra category. That's interesting, right? So, we may look at occupation in terms of what is more prestigious or what is considered higher. At the same time, we know, we understand, we learn that a devotee should be willing to do anything. And if he's needed to paint the house, take out the trash, clean the floor, whatever, he does that. And Prabhupada said, we're not Brahmins, Vaishyas, Shudras, Kshatriyas. We're Vaishnavas, we're above it. And for Krishna service, we can do anything. So we don't want to get hung up on the identity related to my varna or related to my service. Then if I become a Brahmin, then I think I'm special. And even though it may not be my nature to engage so much in Brahminical activity, I'll want to do it because there's more prestige there. Or I'll consider it more advanced. However, we often struggle to accept our own personalities and inclinations, being enamored by seemingly better personality archetypes. And tragically, this keeps us from being the unique and dynamic individual we are supposed to be. Thus, we may engage in a form of deceit and deception by living a life we were never meant to be. So this is, I think, a common problem. Not only is it a problem within Krishna consciousness, it's a general problem that there's like considered a standard of what is successful, and then you try to emulate that occupation or that personality because that's considered successful, and that personality type or that varna has absolutely nothing to do with your nature. And this is so, I find it ironic because in the Gita it's all about do your duty according to your varna. And it's so ironic because in India practically no one is doing their duty according to their varna. They're doing their duty according to what makes money. What? Engineering, programming, accounting, where the job market is. So that mentality can bleed over a bit into ISKCON. And then you start thinking about what would be a respectable position to have, rather than what position you should have according to your nature and according to your capability and according to what would inspire you. So here's the irony. We're getting inspired by a position because it's prestigious rather than getting inspired according to our varna, which is really what would inspire us. It really should inspire us. Right? So that becomes a kind of self-deception because we're not able to admit, well, actually, maybe I'm not meant to be some big this or that, but I'm simply meant to be a simple this or that. That's my nature, that's my personality, that's what Krishna has given me, and that's what I should be happy with. And so the society we're raised in has conditioned us to find it very difficult to be happy when you're surrounded by people who either have more than you or who are more successful or who have positions which are considered higher. And that goes against the nature of bhakti, because the nature of bhakti is to be satisfied in whatever position you're in and be satisfied with who you are. So maybe by nature you want to be somebody you're not, and you have to say, okay, this is my nature, I can't be like him, so I should be satisfied. This is how I can serve Krishna. So as you know, satisfaction is one of the important items of bhakti. The devotee is satisfied, he's satisfied with his position. And that's what this devotee is explaining. this is how I am, but I think this is not as good as this, so I try to be this even though this is not who I am. And then I can't be satisfied because I'm trying to be someone I'm not, thinking that I will be acceptable, it will be acceptable to the society or even my Guru or Krishna to be someone I'm not, and then it becomes artificial. And not really, I won't really be satisfied, I won't really be happy. So what I've seen is that sometimes it takes years for a devotee to actually acknowledge their capabilities and their handicaps, and to understand their nature, their limitations, and to be able to not only acknowledge it, but stage 2, to be able to accept it. That this is actually how I am. And these are the parameters within which I should work. And these other parameters, although I like to work within them, it's beyond the range of my nature or capability. And so it takes time to understand that, number one, and number two, it takes time to accept it. Because once you understand it, you may not accept it. Because there may be not enough prestige around it. Not enough accolades, not enough honor, not enough prestige in your own mind. Now, what is common in the secular world is that in order for people to feel accepted by their peers, they feel it's necessary to have a certain status. And so they become more interested in status than anything else. And what happens is they lose a lot of relationships because they become more interested in showing their friends who they are than actually being friends. The other thing that happens is, if I feel I should be a certain way, but it's not my nature, I can often be focused on that thing that I will never achieve, and not focused on the thing that I could achieve and should achieve, because I'm focused on the thing that I think I should achieve, but I can't. And then because I can't achieve it, I'm in anxiety. And because I'm focused on that thing, I don't even understand what I should do, because I can't focus on what I should do, because I'm focusing on what I shouldn't do, because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. Did I confuse you? Did you understand? We're supposed to be Krishna conscious, we're supposed to be pure devotees, but according to nature there will be different services, and according to nature there will be different results that we will produce. So, taking another position that's not ours, that's right there in the Gita. Arjuna is the Brahman. Krishna says, no, you're not a Brahman, you can't do it. So I find it just fabulously interesting that the whole Gita is about doing your dharma, not someone else's, and we're so conditioned to want to be like somebody else because society has designated this is better. And as we know, Brahman, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra, it's not that the Brahman is necessarily better, he's just different. You know, who is better, a man or a woman? They're different. A lot of times we want to make distinctions better when the distinctions is different. They all have their function. If there were no Shudras, society could not function. If there were only Brahmins, it would be awkward. Nobody would do anything. So, everyone has a function. Everything is good. Just the functions are different. Now, we're not Brahmins or Kshatriyas, Vaishyas or Shudras, but sometimes we take on those roles for service. But we're transcendental. So we should never feel like, oh, if I'm doing the Shudra role, that in any way I'm inferior. You know, you probably heard that story. It's such an interesting story. about the Brahmin and the prostitute. And the prostitute, by destiny, although a devotee, was engaged in the occupation of prostitution. And she was always thinking, Krishna, I'm so bad, I'm so bad. Please help me, please help me, please purify me. She was very Krishna conscious and very, very much in the mood of remorse and always asking Krishna to help her and asking Krishna to forgive her. In that neighborhood was a Brahmin, pure Brahmin. And the Brahmin would always condemn that prostitute because the temple was across the street. So he'd always see her and he would always think how bad she is. What a horrible occupation. She's a devotee. Look what she's doing. Bad, 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 bad. And so, to make a long story short, as you may know, ultimately she went back to Godhead because she was always thinking of Krishna. And he didn't because he was always thinking of her and how bad she was. So, we have these examples that your purity is not dependent on any social position. But still, because we're socially conditioned, we're very influenced by that idea. We're very much influenced. Like, oh, higher position means I'm more Krishna conscious. Higher position means I'm pleasing Krishna more. Now, one time, Prabhupada was talking about this, and he was saying, it doesn't matter what position you have. You should never be enamored by the position. And this is a problem, because when you get a position, it's easy to be enamored by it. You want to put the fan on? Oh, no power. That's funny. Everything is set up to run off power, and we have no power. We spent billions of rupees to set up an infrastructure, and we have no power. Hare Krishna. Okay, now what makes this principle even more ridiculous is that we understand, because Krishna is not material, nothing material makes him happy. You can't please Krishna with something material, because whatever you give him materially is pretty insignificant for him. So you think, well, I can please Krishna because I know so many shlokas. He's not impressed. He knows more shlokas than you. He went to Sandapani Mani's school, he learned everything. He perfected everything very quickly. Mahaprabhu was a great scholar at the age of 11. He was like a PhD, had his own university. You're not going to impress him with your scholarship. And we can go down the line, and obviously we're not going to impress Krishna materially with anything. We're not going to impress him with our cooking, because he doesn't need to eat. He doesn't have a material body. So this idea of needing position to consider that I'm actually doing some substantial service or pleasing Krishna, it makes no sense. Because there's anywhere where Krishna said, get a position and then I'll be happy. Of course, from another perspective we can say, I'm taking a responsible position in devotional service, so Krishna will be pleased. That's a different thing. But we know well that the essence of bhakti is service which gives Krishna pleasure. We know that. And we know, therefore, we should understand that any position I have, it doesn't matter. Only thing that matters is, can I please Krishna from my position? Now, another point that is important for us to understand is that when a devotee advances in Krishna consciousness, No matter how evolved they become, no matter what position they achieve, they're not affected by that. And so, if you're striving for a position because you think that's what Krishna consciousness should be, or you think you'll have some honor or position in the society, then you've already set yourself up for failure. Because when you get in that position, you'll be contaminated by it, meaning you'll start to think, I'm better. Right? Yes? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, you can take a devotee, you can put him in any position. 1 million followers, no followers. 1 million rupees, no rupees. 1 million this, no this. He is exactly the same person, unaffected in every situation. Completely the same. How many people in this world, if you took from poverty to wealth overnight, would be the same person once they become wealthy? No, they'd become proud, generally. Generally, that would be normal, right? The humblest people in the world are not generally the wealthiest people. They're generally the poorest people. Generally. So this is the position we want to come to. We don't want to identify with a position because it gives us some power or recognition. And we want to come to a position, and no matter how much Krishna gives us in terms of resources, men, money, power, recognition, we are always the same person because we're situated in our identity as a humble servant. And so we never get affected by the external surroundings. That's Krishna consciousness. And if we're too identified materially, then we're going to get very affected by position. That's my point. If you want a position, you'll get affected when you have it. If you don't want a position, and Krishna puts you in a position, there's a good chance you will not be affected by it. And if you want a position, and you get it, there's every chance you will be affected by it, because you wanted that position to be recognized. So the other point that's being made here is that sometimes when you confront your limitations, it can become extremely difficult to accept them. Because the truth often is very painful, isn't it? Like that's why a lot of times we prefer to stay in illusion, because ignorance is bliss. And the truth is not always blissful. Sometimes the truth about ourselves sometimes is very, very painful. Right? And so that's why sometimes it's hard to accept ourselves as we are. But that's something we have to learn. That's part of being humble. And you know where envy comes from. Somebody's better than you and you can't accept it. Because you can't accept yourself, it's hard to accept others. When we were doing this workshop, one of the aspects of the workshop was your relationship with yourself, which is an interesting topic. It's not something you'll find commonly discussed. What's your relationship with yourself? And so we were making the point, how you deal with yourself is how you tend to deal with others. You're hard on yourself, you tend to be hard on others. You don't love yourself, you don't love others. Critical of yourself, you're critical of others. So oftentimes, because we don't accept ourselves, we don't accept others. I'm not perfect, I can't accept myself, I can't accept you because you're not perfect. So how we deal with ourselves, then we begin dealing with others that way. I can't accept myself. I expect more from myself, but I'll never be what I expect because it's not my nature. Then I become frustrated with you. I want you to be a certain way. It's not your nature. And so often not being able to accept ourselves becomes the cause of our envy of others. We've been discussing Isopanishad, first verse. Accept your quota, whatever it is. And don't desire another person's quota. Oh, your quota, 100,000, 1 lakh a month. Your quota, 2 lakhs. His quota, 3 lakhs. Her quota, 4 lakhs. My quota, no lakhs. So now I'm envious of all of you. No. We're meant to accept by the will of Krishna, this is my quota. This is what I get. That's, in our social context, we got it, it's too loud. In our social context, I'm sure you're used to all this noise, right? You don't even notice it, right? Yeah. That's city dwellers. They don't notice. City dwellers don't notice how noisy it is. But when you come from the country, you notice how noisy it is. Yeah. So, if we become satisfied with who we are and what Krishna gives us, and how our karma plays out, and how our service plays out. Of course, we always try to do our best. We can always do better. But if we're satisfied, basically, these are my capabilities. These are, like I have God brothers, right? All I have to do is read a verse and they remember it. Like once, twice, or 3 times maximum, and they remember it. And they remember it for their whole life. I can't do that. I have to go over it and over it. And I'll forget it if I don't keep chanting it. It's just the way my brain is. I don't have that kind of memory, right? But I like Sanskrit. I can understand Sanskrit to some degree. I can chant Sanskrit fairly well. So that's a plus. I just can't remember all the shlokas as easily as others. So that's just something I have to accept. And then utilize that. Okay, I'll chant a lot of shlokas, because if I chant them enough, I'll remember them. Right? That's how I'll remember them. That's just the way I do it. Or I can sing well, but I can't manage well. Or I can cook well, but I can't do accounting well. Whatever it is, we are meant to be satisfied, and in that way we won't become envious of others who have qualities that we don't have. Otherwise, when we're not satisfied with ourselves, we start becoming envious of others who are better. And I think one of the most awkward things, if you look at it from this perspective, the most awkward thing about envy is that you may be envious of another devotee who is doing amazing service for Prabhupada, or amazing service for your Guru Maharaj. And so it makes absolutely no sense to be envious of that devotee. It's totally, I would say, asuric to be envious of someone who's doing outstanding service to please Guru and Krishna. But because they're doing better than you, and because you're not satisfied with yourself, then you become envious. But as soon as you're satisfied, okay, Krishna has given me this service, this intelligence, these abilities, I can use them, and it's not a matter externally what I produce, it's a matter of doing it sincerely to please Krishna. And if I do that, I can be satisfied, and then it doesn't bother me that other people are excelling me. But if I don't have that mentality, I get very bothered by it. And when I get bothered by it, what do? I start criticizing them. Because I don't like it that other people appreciate them. Oh, did you hear the lecture of so-and-so? It was so good. No, it wasn't. I heard it. It wasn't good at all. That's what we'll do. We'll find some fault with it, right? Because we can't tolerate another person being praised. Because it makes us feel bad about ourselves. Because we already feel bad about ourselves. That's why it makes us feel bad about ourselves. If you don't feel bad about yourself, why would another person's success make you feel bad about yourself? Right? Isn't it? It's interesting, right? So, and ultimately another person can't make you feel bad about yourself. You already do feel bad about yourself. And they just remind you how bad you feel about yourself. When you see, it's like you're not rich and you feel bad about the fact you're not rich. And then you see some rich person, you go to their house and you're like, I hate you. Because I can never have a house like this. I can never have a life like this. So, isn't it? Yeah. Now, I have some bad news for you. You cannot be envious of anyone if you're not envious of Krishna. So, you're envious of another person or another devotee is just a reflection of your envy of Krishna. And a reflection of your dissatisfaction with your position because you haven't fully accepted your position as servant of Krishna. And when you fully accept that position, I am servant, whatever Krishna wants me to do, I do. Little service here, little service there, whatever I can do, I do it, I'm satisfied. Your envy it'll evaporate. Because you're satisfied with what you have. The other day a couple weeks ago in Mayapur, I was giving a class, and the theme of the class was to meditate on how fortunate we are to be in Mahaprabhu's movement, to have his mercy and so forth. And how ironic it is to be in Mahaprabhu's movement, the most fortunate of the fortunate of the fortunate, and to not be satisfied. It's a total paradox, isn't it? Like you have everything. You have the wealth of prema. You have the sangha of devotees. You have the holy name, which can give you love of Krishna. To not be satisfied, it's ridiculous. Well, I'm not satisfied because materially I lack this and that. But look at spiritually, you have this tremendous wealth. And you're not satisfied because of a lack materially. That is a very low level of consciousness. And that consciousness is being impregnated by our society at every moment. You need to have this, you need to have that. You don't rate if you don't have this, you don't have this label, this watch, this job, this position, this car. It's just on and on and on and on. And we say, no, I have Krishna. I don't need that. I have some service. I have some sadhana. I'm the most fortunate. That's how we're supposed to think. And so we don't need a material identity within Krishna consciousness. We need the identity which suits our service, whatever that service is. We don't need someone else's identity. Why is he temple president, not me? Why is she in charge of this and not me? And when you develop that attitude, then mystically Krishna gives you position. At that point when you don't want it, then you get it. And why? Because now you're qualified for it. It's because you don't want it. Krishna can give it to you. So, I think we should stop and have some questions. So, you know this idea of being satisfied. It's definitely part of our philosophy. City noises. We're driving the listeners on Facebook crazy with these cars driving by. These beautiful sounds, right? The beautiful sounds of nature are the birds. Right? This was not, someone's asking, is this a verse? No, it's not a verse. It's a devotee's realization that I rewrote. And yeah, okay. Ask your question, yeah.
As you told, we reach a position and we get that changes in our mind or something.
Yes, affected by it,
yeah. So, how to have that thing in our mind to change it? What steps should we be taken to change that?
The best step is to not be affected by it. So, I think I was talking about this last night. I was telling this story. I heard this man speaking. He set himself up to become successful as a speaker. And there was a certain time his career took off, and it took off very quickly. And he became very quickly famous and very quickly wealthy. And he said something that stood out in my mind. He said, practically overnight, sometimes you launch something on YouTube and then you get 1 million hits, and like overnight everybody knows you. So he said, practically overnight I became famous and I became wealthy. Like from the, hundreds of thousands of dollars just came in a few days. And he said, but I had the same problems. I had the same this, the same that. I was the same person. So I think we need to remember that. A lot of times I think, if you're successful, if I meet someone successful, I sometimes say, so if you didn't have that break, you didn't get this position, what would you be doing now? And how would you be thinking differently? So I might just be, driving a taxi. And the greatness of that person is if he could stay in the same mood as the taxi driver, even though he's the CEO of Google, then yes, he's a little bit humble. So it's the remembrance of I'm insignificant spirit soul. That's always my position. I'm a humble servant of my Guru and Krishna. That's always my position. No matter what's happening around me, that's always my position. If we can remember that, we're okay. The problem, in my estimation, is we want honor. So when we're in a position to get honor, we get affected by it because we want it. We don't want to let it go by. Say, look at my position. Thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are applauding me. I can't ignore it. I want to bathe in it. I want to bask in the pleasure of knowing that I'm famous. But for someone who's more advanced, that's not what they want, so they don't get affected by it. They go, oh, you're so famous, yeah, whatever. They feel the same as they did the day before when they weren't famous, because it's not what they're looking for. So the real problem is that we want it, and that's why we get affected by it. Ultimately, how can you get affected by anything if you don't want it? The beautiful girl comes and goes, oh, I lost my mind. Well, he didn't lose his mind. Well, you wanted her and he didn't. It's the same beautiful girl. Because the desire is there for it. That's why you get affected. So we have to internally understand, I'm humble, servant of Krishna, no matter what happens. And that's where I want to stay. Then all the facility can come, all the praise can come, the resources, whatever comes your way. And you're exactly like you were the day before when you had nothing. That's basically the explanation that Bhaktisiddhanta gave. And I think that's so beautiful, because it's so hard to do, but it's so true that we are the same person. And everybody knows you're the same person. And all your friends heard, oh, you just you were walking down the street, you had to go to Mumbai for some business, and you're walking down the street, and some movie director said, you're the perfect person. We need someone who looks just like you to play this part, And, all of a sudden you find out you're a great actor, and then, 3 months from now, it's a blockbuster and you're like known by everyone in India. And you're the man and you've got like more money than you know what to do with. But in your heart of hearts, I'm not any different. I'm the same person. But if you let it go to your head, because you want it to go to your head, that's when you're in trouble. So my realization is anything that affects us, it affects us because we have a desire for it. And if we didn't have if I don't have a desire for fame, no amount of fame is going to affect me. If I don't have a desire to enjoy A, B, and C, you can give me all the A, B, and C you want. It's just like, no, thank you, I don't want it. But if I have a desire for it, just a little A, B, and C, I'll go to my head, go crazy. I'll become very proud or disturbed. So if I can always remember I'm an insignificant servant, then I'm okay. No matter what happens, no matter how powerful, how much power Krishna gives me or what facility gives me, if I can remember I'm just insignificant servant. And I look at Prabhupada. I had this experience with Prabhupada. Every morning Prabhupada would walk in the temple, and about maybe 250, 300 devotees would greet him. And it was a big greeting. It was like the king coming in, it was a big fanfare. Ah, Srila Prabhupada! And then 300 people hit the ground, So Prabhupada was walking in, the door was there, and I was sitting here in the line. And the and everyone's, Jai Prabhupada, Hare Krishna, like that, you know. And one devotee next to me said, Jai Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada thought she was calling him, like, Prabhupada, and he turned around, yes, you're calling? You know, amidst the big fanfare, he hears his name and he thinks someone's calling him. And he turns around, yes, can I help you? So I was there, I got to see that, and I thought, that's amazing. This exalted personality, and a woman next to him is not even calling him and saying, Jai Prabhupada. My other incarnation is down there. Can we close that door? All the way? You don't have to lock it, but just close it. Yeah. So we saw in Srila Prabhupada this very unassuming person. And I have another experience. So I had the fortune of offering Guru Puja once to Prabhupada. And it was such an interesting experience because during the Guru Puja, there are probably 300 devotees in the temple. So everyone's, Prabhupada, you know, jumping. And so Prabhupada's being worshipped. And he seemed totally uninterested in the worship. And my experience was, although I was doing the puja to him, my experience was his response was like he was sitting alone in the temple. There was nobody chanting to him and nobody worshiping him. It was just like, or maybe we could say another way, I'm just doing this as a servant of Krishna for their benefit. But there was no, you could see there was no trace of, oh, I like this. This is nice. Let's do this every day. This is what I'm here for. This is really why I came to America. You know, this is what I was looking for. There was no trace of that. It was just like, I can do it or not do it. I'm doing it for the devotees. But my immediate experience at that point was like, Prabhupada looks like he's sitting in a room with no people. No puja, no people. And I was giving the puja and I was thinking, this is amazing. It's like there's no desire to be honored. And so that's the key. And when we have that desire to be honored, that's why we get bewildered. So that's what we have to work on. Always remembering that I'm a humble servant. No matter what I have or don't have, I'm always a humble servant. If I give the greatest lecture of my life and people give me a standing ovation, I'm still the same person as I was before the lecture. And if they boo me and throw pies in my face, then I have to deal with it on the opposite side. I have to remain steady in that. Say, no, I'm just a humble servant. I tried my best. Don't get upset when things are bad and don't go crazy when things are good. So don't get enamored by the praise that's being offered, because if you do, then you're going to get enamored when people criticize you. So you have to learn how to not be affected by either one. And a lot of people don't understand when Krishna says, don't be affected by happiness. Why wouldn't you want to be affected by happiness? Because if you are, you'll get affected by sadness also. Because you're getting affected by duality. So if I can be steady in happiness and think, oh, whatever, Krishna's giving some happiness, thank you. But my real focus is on service, then if things aren't so well, I can remain focused. So that's my bottom line realization. We get affected because we want it. And when we purify that desire, then you can be in any situation, any kind of praise or whatever, any position of honor, control. And you'll always be very humble. And everybody likes a leader who's humble, who's genuine. Even though he has all the power, he doesn't take advantage of it. But he uses the power to serve, to help other people. Everybody loves that kind of leader. And the immature leader will, now that he's in position, he'll use it to control and kind of be a dictator of sorts. And everybody hates it because it's so inhumane. It's not genuine. It's just arrogant. And nobody likes arrogant people. Generally. Yes. Yes.
Before coming to Krishna consciousness, we were in college and we have friends. Sometimes we see that now they become very successful they're going outside to study in big universities. And
Yes.
all of that. So when I see that, I feel bad sometimes because I feel I didn't achieve anything materially. No, I also feel I'm not doing anything very good in Prabhupada's movement.
Uh-huh.
So feel low about that.
Yeah. Okay. So she's saying all her friends are successful. She went into Krishna consciousness, so she didn't pursue a career like them. So she feels, maybe I could have been successful materially. And then she feels like she's not doing that well spiritually, so pretty much a loser in materially and spiritually. Well, definitely not a loser spiritually. That you have to understand. And you have your whole life to progress in spiritual life and progress in your service. And so better to think that you're fortunate to be a devotee, and then think maybe the problem is you need to be more focused on what is your dharma and what you need to do, what you would want to do in service, and then connect with that and gradually do something that you can be satisfied with or proud of, so to speak. I also dropped out of university, but as Prabhupada said, so many lifetimes we enjoyed Maya, so why do it again? You know, think, I could have, I've stayed in university, I could have done this, and by now I'd have this position, and maybe I'd be a great honored scholar, and a PhD in philosophy, and a writer, and you'd see me on TED, and I'd have 20 books written by now, and you know. But if that was at the cost of bhakti, then that would be my greatest misfortune. So I think we have to appreciate our position in bhakti. And as one person said, the greatest companies have not yet been invented. The greatest products that will come into the world have not yet been invented. So your greatest self perhaps it's not invented yet, but it's still there, waiting to come out. And you need to find your service and take your inspiration and start doing something. As inspired as your friends are to be materially successful, you can be inspired to be spiritually successful. Right? Yes? Why not? For Prabhupada, not for our ego, but for Prabhupada. I want to be successful for Prabhupada. Why not? Well,
like you were telling about Krishna is selling Bhagavad Gita, we should act as per our nature. But as per the current system, that the education system, it doesn't help us to know what is our nature.
yeah.
Like it's kind of Asuri Varnashram, we are a mixture of Brahman, Vishnu, whatever.
Yeah.
So how do we know what is our nature? This absence only will look after, okay, this career is giving some benefit, or people are doing this.
There are different ways you can know. I've given a workshop on it. And it must be on my website. And there's some questions also. But, you know, one of the simple questions is, what would you do? Like you just won the lottery, so you'll never need to work. So now what would you do the rest of your life? That's a place to start. Because the problem we have in understanding our nature is we always bring in the equation of, well, how will it make money? And so, you know, if you think, well, I could be, I like to do this or that, but it won't make money. So then I don't think about it. I can only think in the parameters of what would make money. Although some people say, if you're smart, you can make money doing anything. Or wasn't it Prabhupada said the Maoris could make money selling dirt or selling anything, right? So that's a good question. If you didn't have to work, you had all the money you needed, what would you do? What would you like to do? What, you know, and you might say, well, I'd like to go out and chant or preach at colleges or like that. That may be true, but you want to look for the varna of what you'd like to do. Like, what would I like to do? Maybe it's teaching, or maybe like that. So you say, well, so I'm not going to obviously make a living preaching at the colleges, most likely, but maybe it means my, varna is to be a professor, and then I could influence students as a professor. Maybe a philosophy professor. Maybe a professor of religion. Maybe a motivational speaker, maybe, so something like that. Or I'd love to start a company. Maybe I'm really a Vaishya. I have all these ideas. So that's a starting point. You take away the money in the equation, and you take away the practicality of whether it can be done or not. Once you take those two things away, it's easier to think. Because I think all of us kind of know our nature, but it's covered by the practicality and the money. Yes? Yeah, that's okay.
So my nature may be to teach, but I may not be good at that. So
that's fine. You can learn. You can become trained. But that's when you're trying to understand your nature. It's not whether you're trained or not to do it, but it's whether it's more your swabhav. That's what Krishna has created you to do. And when you do it, you become inspired. Another question that's often asked is, what could you do all day and not get tired of doing? Do it every day and not get tired. So generally, something which is your swabhav is something you can do every day and you won't get tired of. You'll always be inspired. And you'll be energized at the end of the day, even though you did it all day, at the end of the day you'll be energized. Like today we gave class, now I'm giving class. Then later we're going to go out and make some videos. And after we make all the videos, all the devotees are going to say, well, you must be tired. I'll say, no, I'm not tired. Say, but you've been preaching all day. I go, yeah, but I like to preach, so I'm not tired. If it was, if I've been doing accounting all day, then I'd be tired. Because accounting is not something that I find exciting. Right? So that thing, which is your swabhav, will always energize you. You can do it all day, every day. So that's another. What could I do every day? What would I be inspired to do every day, all day? And for some women, it might just be, have more kids. I would love to have 10 kids, 15 kids. Okay, that's fine. That's your nature. I think of I just heard a devotee, I was talking to a devotee on the phone. I said, I met so-and-so in Mayapur, this devotee from Australia. And I was talking to a disciple from Australia, and she said, oh, that's so-and-so. He has 13 children. I couldn't imagine. I had enough trouble with one. And because it's not that I have trouble with my daughter, I don't mean that, but just, maintaining a family takes time and energy and money. So 13, that's quite expensive and time consuming. But for some people, they love that. Just like, anything less than 13 would cause them serious depression. Whereas someone else, 13 would put them in a mental hospital. They wouldn't be able to handle it. So everyone has different nature. And you'll find that according to your nature, that thing which inspires you may depress someone else. Oh, I could never do that. I'd never want to do that. That would be so hard. I couldn't do that. And you're like, are you crazy? I could do this all day. I love this. This is easy. This is not hard. And another thing I realize is a lot of people don't understand their nature because some things come easy to them, so they don't understand that there's like anything special about doing that. But the fact is, because it comes easy to you, you don't always know that it's not easy for everyone. So that indicates, like I say, so you chant 16 rounds a day every month for 10 years, and 3 days you chant 20, on the Ekadasi you chant 25. How many rounds is that in 10 years? And you're like, do, 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 do. In your head, you come right out with the number. And I'm like, how did you do that? I don't know. I always did that. It was easy. So you don't realize. Right? So these are some things we also have to ask. Well, what do I do well that's just easy for me? I don't even think about it, and it just comes out. Right? So these are some ways of understanding. And the last thing I would say about this is all the social conditioning and the pressure from your parents to be whatever it is they want you to be, that makes it harder to understand, because that's where your mind has been. I should do this because it'll give me financial stability, and I can build a family on this, which is true. But a lot of that thinking, because it was so financially based, it kind of blocked your mind from actually thinking about what you really want to do. Right? You just never thought like that because that never was really given to you to think about. It was just like, well, what do you want to do? Engineer, computer programmer, accountant, or MBA? You know, it was like that was given to you. So you didn't think, well, actually, photographer. Because that wasn't one of the choices. So you thought within those four. So your brain wasn't like trained to think, well, what is my contribution? What gifts did Krishna give me? And obviously, if you're trained in a certain way, you have a degree, you may not, at this point in your life, have an occupation according to your varna, but you can at least do service according to your varna. So now it's time for Sindhu Prashna. Sindhu Ananta Prashna. Does that answer your question okay? Yeah.
Which workshop? What is the name of the workshop?
It's called Finding Your Dharma, something like in your Prabhupada's mission. Should be on SoundCloud. And there, if you go to my website, there's a section where the most popular workshops are listed and they connect with the course material. It should be there. If it's not, just write me. And it's a question, about 50 questions, 100 questions, to help you understand a little more about yourself. And my feeling is we all know the answer. And once you get the answer, you're like, yeah, of course. Why didn't I know this? But it's just, we weren't trained to think that way. Yes?
Maharaj, Prabhupada, when the devotees used to leave the movement and go, that time he used to separately sit and cry. So then, what kind of an effect was that?
Oh, so she's asking, in the beginning of the movement, when devotees would leave, sometimes Prabhupada would cry. Or he used to say, his spiritual master, when someone would leave, he would say, I could not save this devotee. He'd cry, I could not save this devotee. He changed later on. Later on, I think he saw that there was a limitation in how much he could help the devotee, and ultimately it was up to them. And so, if they left, he would say, what can I do? Even in the beginning, sometimes he would say that. And it would, I think it would also depend on the relationship he had with the disciple. It was a very close relationship. And that disciple left, it was like your son or daughter is leaving. If it was not a close relationship, he may also be affected differently, because it wasn't personal. Sometimes when a devotee left, Prabhupada would ask his disciples, go find that devotee, bring him back, or convince him to come back. Well, Prabhupada is also, although he's Acharya Sakshadhari, he's also a person with his own various relationships with his disciples and his specific feelings about how to deal with disciples who have left. So there were times when he just was very detached because they made that choice. And then another thing is, if a disciple leaves, then of course the spiritual master will always be merciful to that disciple, but in a sense, more in a sense of our philosophy, they're not disciples anymore, or they never were, possibly disciples. Because the disciple is one who accepts the guru, and so if the disciple does not accept the guru, then how can they be called a disciple, even though they went through a formal ceremony? It's like you could go through a marriage ceremony, but maybe your husband's actually in love with someone else. So you call yourself married, but you could say, we were never really married because he always loved his girlfriend from high school. And his parents just made him marry me. So that makes a good Bollywood movie, but something like that. So.
When Prabhupada, if he was addressing an audience and when somebody, if they didn't turn up, if nobody turned up in the audience, was he affected by that?
No.
He was the same person as he was in a crowd.
Yeah. Generally, yes. Personally, now he might be affected from the perspective of how successfully or how strategically we could preach. So, I will preach to anyone, no matter what. But we want more people to come. So he could, why didn't you organize? Why didn't you advertise properly? And so forth. So that may be a concern. But we know in the early days, he gave a lecture. There was nobody there or very few people there. And the devotees apologized. He said, no, you didn't see. Narada Muni came. Lord Brahma came. Demigods were here. Very successful. So, it depends on the context. But a pure devotee is not affected by these things. Prabhupada said when he came to America, he said, I was not prepared to compromise, even if no one accepted Krishna consciousness. So it wasn't his plan. I'm prepared. I will not compromise, even if no one accepts Krishna consciousness. So he wasn't looking for followers. He wasn't evaluating his success on the basis of followers as much as on the basis of giving Krishna consciousness purely. And so he said, if nobody comes, then nobody comes, but I won't water it down. So that detachment is necessary. So he's not doing this to acquire disciples. He's doing this to help people. So if they want to be helped, he helps them.
If Prabhupada came back unsuccessful, suppose he came back unsuccessful from there, he didn't make a single disciple, he would not have felt bad at all.
It's difficult to say. I could say philosophically speaking, no. But in terms of his bhakti to his guru, maybe on that level, yes, that I failed my guru. But in terms of being beyond duality, no, I did my best. People were not ready to hear. But because his guru wanted him to do something, then actually the disciple wants to satisfy their guru. So that sense, yes, he may be lamenting, but it would be not under the modes of nature, but lamenting that I couldn't fulfill the desire of my guru. But it wouldn't be that he's depressed. He would give up hearing and chanting and like that. He would be happy in his sadhana and his whatever service he could do. But concerned about the mission around the world, that he wasn't able to execute it. Certainly that concern would naturally be there. But I think the bottom line is you try your best, and that's all you can do. And I think if Prabhupada tried his best and it wasn't successful, he would accept that. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't Krishna's desire. Many devotees have said, if Prabhupada came 10 years earlier, nothing would have happened. Not much would have happened.
Like where he would settle now?
So from my perspective, and the perspective of Prabhupada's disciples, we understand it was all divine arrangement. Prabhupada came at the time he did, and so because the world situation was a certain way, he couldn't have failed. The only way he could have failed is by not being a pure devotee, but because who he was, and he could not have failed within that environment. It was the best possible environment ever in the history of America to spread Krishna consciousness. 1965 was the best possible environment. So Krishna arranged that. There's no doubt about it. There was a drastic change in society amongst the youth. Drastic, 180-degree, complete change. And if that change weren't made, it would have got very few people. But since that change was there, so many people came. You might say, well, Prabhupada only had 5,000 disciples, but he was starting with nothing. And that was 7 years, starting from nothing. So now the present gurus, they have, 43 years, And they were starting with a whole organization. They were already, when Prabhupada left, there were already 10,000 people. Or more, 100,000 people. So,
And even if Prabhupada would have been affected with the spiritual, not
yeah. Out of a desire to please his guru. He might lament that I haven't pleased my guru. Yeah, yeah. You know, there's a poem by Prabhupada. It's an Ashtaka, Viraha Ashtaka, separation. And the Prabhupada's lamenting about the condition of the Gaudiya Math. How they did not achieve that the level of success they had during the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had waned. And now what they could have done or what they should have done is not being done. So he was lamenting. It was a prayer to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And he was lamenting, look what has happened. We need, my brothers, we need to come together. And every end of every line, he expressed feeling separation from his guru by seeing the condition of Gaudiya Math and the condition of the world. So it's not that we're without emotion.
Is the spiritual lamentation, does it have bliss in it?
Yes. Spiritual lamentation is very blissful. It has to be.
Success in service is not synonymous with Krishna consciousness, might be in Krishna consciousness or not. So in that, it includes position, it includes whatever we may be, materially speaking, or spiritually also, like book distribution and everything. That doesn't necessarily mean that one is Krishna conscious or not. So then, but we can give somebody Krishna consciousness and we ourselves are Krishna conscious. So, but we also see like this Ritvikism, the Ritvik devotees, they are flourishing so much, they are making so many Krishna conscious devotees. So then, is it that they are Krishna conscious and that's why they are able to make people Krishna conscious, or what is it?
Hare Krishna. Yeah, they're Krishna conscious, they just missed one point of the philosophy. So yeah, they're giving people Krishna consciousness, but their understanding of Guru Tattva is not perfect. But other than that, they're giving people Krishna conscious, and they're inspired, and they're well organized, and they're inspired by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada's letting them do that seva, and maybe at some point they'll turn over their properties to ISKCON and be all part of Krishna's plan.
When we are Krishna conscious, then we can give others Krishna consciousness. So by this statement, can we understand that every successful teacher is Krishna conscious?
He's Krishna conscious if he makes people Krishna conscious.
By this we can understand every successful teacher who is making devotees is Krishna conscious himself. 100%, whoever it may be.
Well, I know someone who made a lot of devotees, but he never really became a devotee himself. He was a very attractive young man, and he made a lot of attractive young women devotees. So there's more to it, because he couldn't train them. So it's not just you get them to move into the temple. You have to, if you're not Krishna conscious, you can't train them. So there are exceptions, certainly, that someone may have an ability to speak, to convince others. But in the long run, to make someone a pure devotee, you have to be a pure devotee. So I can get you to become a devotee, but unless I'm a pure devotee, how will I get you to become a pure devotee?
So it's not necessary. It's not necessary that every successful
It's
teacher is
It's generally it would be, but there could be exceptions.
So Maharaj was saying that like if a devotee is distributing the maximum number of books, he might not be the most advanced devotee ever. But if he continues to distribute books, continues to do the seva, would that result in his advancement?
Yeah, it's a good question. So let's say I'm very good at distributing books, and maybe I'm also partially motivated by the praise I get. So it's a pure service, the motivation is pure, but there's some contamination. So will I become purified if I continue doing the service? Maybe. That will depend on you. Okay, theoretically, yeah, you do the service, you'll get purified. But It will still depend on you. What your ambition is, how attached you are, etc. So, it's always possible that the weeds can grow. It's possible. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, if you're not careful, your hearing and chanting will water the weeds instead of water the creeper. So that's why we have to be detached enough that doesn't happen. We can't, be maintaining some weeds just in case I need them for some sense gratification. Then then it's trouble. So yes, generally, if you're serious, you're sincere, you will become purified. Because you want to be purified, and you want to do it right, and you're just conditioned, so maybe not yet totally pure, maybe not yet totally unmotivated, but because you're sincere, then you will become purified. It's just that, I would say for some people, there's a level of purification they may not be ready for. And there's a level of material motivation that they may be cultivating. And so then the bhakti won't necessarily purify that anartha. It may resonate with it in some way. Or you can use your service to exalt your material position. And then you read in the Bhagavatam, it describes bhakti in the mode of passion, bhakti in the mode of ignorance, which seems like a paradox. How could you have bhakti in the mode of passion or ignorance? Well, it's bhakti mixed with that mode. And then you get all these anomalies when mixed with that mode. Proud devotees, angry devotees, devotees who think they're better than everyone. Kind of a paradox, right? So unless they get purified of those modes, then their bhakti is just going to remain in passion or ignorance. So in theory, if you do the process right, you'll get purified. But that's not necessarily true that you'll do it right. So I would say, at least this is how I tell myself, I always tell myself, you have to be careful. You have to be careful about how you deal with devotees. You have to be careful to be sufficiently detached. You have to be careful every day execute sufficient sadhana. You have to be careful to have the right attitudes. Because if you don't, then something could be like an acid in your bhakti. Even though you're doing book distribution every day and doing well, there could be something in there that's an acid to your creeper. It's possible, right? And what example do we have? We have Jad Bharat. So here, he's a very elevated devotee, but he allowed himself to get deviated. And then when he got deviated, he stopped his sadhana. One thing led to another. So that could be another reason. You're doing your service, but you allow something to get in there that starts to be a deviation. You get attached to something that's not healthy for bhakti, or even destructive for bhakti. So we have to be careful. And the way I personally think is, if I want to be Krishna conscious, which I do, then I'll be very careful about eliminating anything or restricting anything that's going to get in the way of that. And if for some reason I become a little more interested in material prestige and power, then even in the name of bhakti, I may get sidetracked. Because pure devotional service may not be that important to me, whereas material position may be more important. Then you're in trouble.
So Maharaj, initially it starts with this, initially we have desire for prestige or desire for a lot of other things, right? But slowly we need to get ourselves purified, so that's the...
Yeah. Or not so slowly. I'm trying to help devotees do it faster. I like to help devotees realize, that there's a lot of things going on internally that could be problematic. And I'd like to help them realize it sooner than later. So, I think that is consistent with our philosophy. It can in one sense you could say, well, it can't happen fast because you're a conditioned soul. In another sense, it can if you apply yourself. It can happen faster. Can't say how fast, but it can happen faster.
Importance. This way, like we should know the knowledge of the scriptures, or we should follow the scriptures. What is the difference?
Should we know the scriptures or follow scriptures? You could know the scripture or not follow. It's better you don't know and you follow, if that's possible, than know and don't follow. But like, maybe your grandmother trained you up, so you're following all the scripture, you don't even know you're following. You don't know what scripture it's from, what the shloka is, but at least you're following. That's better than reciting all the shlokas. And not following. Hare Krishna. Fireworks.
So knowing the shlokas and not following. So out of the two, which is better?
Following. But then I could reformulate your question. You say knowing, then I would say, but if you don't follow, you don't really know. So that's another way of putting it. Okay, I know all these things, but I don't follow. I say, no, you don't know them. You just know about them, because you don't really know them. Because if you knew them, actually knew them, that would mean you're following them. And like sometimes you tell a kid, you should do this, and they say, I know. And you're thinking, you don't know. No, I know, you told me already. But they're not doing it. So you don't think knowing is sufficient. But why didn't you do it if you know it? Oh, I'll do it later. No, do it now. And then when you see them do it, you think, okay, now they know. They did it. But before that, you think, he doesn't understand. He's not doing what I'm asking him. But he says he is. He says he understands. But I guess the question would be, how could you do it if you didn't know what you're supposed to do? But that would be unknown, agyata sukriti. You do some devotional service. I call you over and say, can you help me with this? And you're not a devotee, and you help me. So you've done devotional service. So that's good. You didn't even know and you did it. That's better than knowing and not doing it. Well, someone could say, well, but if you know, potentially you could do it. That's there also. But until you do it, doing it is better than knowing and not doing it. Hare Krishna.
We are satisfied with our position, we are not limiting our chances of improvement.
Yeah. So, if we're satisfied, a devotee should be satisfied, it's the quality of a devotee, then it sounds like if you're satisfied, then you won't be very inspired to improve, expand. That would be more of a material definition of satisfied. Satisfied in bhakti means that I'm relishing. I'm relishing hearing and chanting and association and serving. And that satisfied means I don't have material desire. Right? But it's not the kind of satisfaction which is complacency satisfaction. So it's a satisfaction that I don't need anything other than Krishna. But that doesn't mean I don't want more Krishna. It doesn't mean I don't want to do more for Krishna. It just means that I'm materially, I don't need anything else. So in that sense, that satisfaction is detaching me from material attractions so that I can be more focused on in Krishna consciousness and work on my Krishna consciousness. If you're satisfied, it's not the connotation that, I drink and I'm satisfied and I'm finished drinking. It's not like that. The satisfaction in Krishna consciousness, the more you're satisfied, the more you want it. It's spiritual. Is Thakur Haridas satisfied when he's chanting? Yeah, he's very satisfied. Can he stop chanting? No. So the satisfaction is becoming the impetus for more. Prabhupada was vigorously engaged in serving Krishna. Was he satisfied? Yes. Was he in anxiety that the world was not Krishna conscious? Yes. So satisfied internally, but also not satisfied because I can do more. So they exist simultaneously. Like, I want to do more to spread Krishna consciousness, but when I chant my rounds, I'm very satisfied. But that satisfaction just becomes an inspiration to do more, not to do nothing. You know, it's Sunday afternoon, we just had a big meal, I'm satisfied, let's go to sleep. It's not like that. That's more material. So again, I think it's a matter of defining things either materially or spiritually. And so we tend to look at the word satisfaction from standardized material conception. I'm satisfied, so I don't need any more. Are you satisfied? You have enough to eat? Yes, satisfied. But it's not like that.
We are satisfied, then also we not anything, or that is good or not.
If you're materially satisfied, is good for a devotee, because then he won't need to expand his material life. And then he can focus on his spiritual life. So that's good. Should be materially satisfied. But materially satisfied and material sense gratification are different. Because materially, through sense gratification, you'll never be satisfied. But satisfied means I have enough money, I have enough this, I have enough that, I don't need more. So now I can focus on service. But I can do more service. I want to do more service. Right?
We say ignorance is bliss. Can you please explain it more?
Well, it's kind of like getting drunk. When you get drunk, you forget all your problems. So if you have a problem and you can forget it temporarily, then you feel good. It's like the problem has gone away. So, like I was saying, the truth can be upsetting. So if the truth is upsetting, ignorance is blissful. Because then I just block out the truth and don't worry about it, and then I feel good. No, it's really the mode of ignorance. Ignorance is never good. That's a description. Ignorance is bliss is a description of tamaguna. It's not really, it's not ananda. Ignorance is not ananda. No. It's a kind of tamasic happiness that comes from neglecting or forgetting something. Krishna consciousness would mean transcending or not worrying about something that we can't control. That's different. I'm ignoring this. Why? Because I can't control it. And I've accepted I can't control it. So now I can ignore it. So that's okay. But something that's a problem and you're ignoring it and you can fix it, that's ignorance is bliss. Now just pretend the problem doesn't exist and I'm happy. Last question.
Which one to choose now? Okay, Maharaj, you have to be Krishna conscious to make someone Krishna conscious. So then, if somebody is Krishna conscious and is not able to make other Krishna conscious, so by that do we necessarily understand that he himself is not Krishna conscious?
Somebody cannot make someone else Krishna conscious. Does it mean they're not Krishna conscious? Generally it would mean that. There could be exceptions. But it's pretty hard. If you're actually Krishna conscious, it's hard not to make others Krishna conscious. Just by your presence, they will become Krishna conscious. But there may be some rare cases where he's like an avadut and his behavior is misunderstood by people and so may not have effect on people in general. That's possible.
Maharaj, like the example of Ramananda Rai, that is so that he was a Shudra and yet he was a devotee, so the externals are, by the external, like our ashrama is not affected by bhakti. So then, but whether one is a Shudra or whether he is a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, he should compulsorily have the qualities of a Brahmana or not.
Yeah. Yes.
So by default, everybody is should be a Brahmana.
Well, everybody's born less than Shudra. But anyone who comes to Krishna consciousness, they will, or comes to the Vedic path, they'll gradually cultivate sattva. And all the Brahminical qualities are sattvic qualities. So, this is your occupation. These are the qualities that are necessary to engage in a Shudra occupation. And you have those qualities. Then you come home and you do puja.
So he's following two ashramas. One is Brahmanical culture, one is own work that he's doing.
Not following two. He has his varna, which is his work, but his lifestyle is Brahminical. Or Vaishnav. Just say, your lifestyle is Vaishnav. Vaishnav lifestyle and Shudra occupation. So many of our devotees, they work all day, and then they come home and do puja. So technically speaking, if you're employed by someone, you're a Shudra. So they go, they work for a big company, they get a paycheck. But every night they come home and they do hearing and chanting and puja. I thought that was the last question. One more question, then I'll fall asleep. It's so hot in here, I'm falling asleep. Okay, you want to ask one? Better be a good one. Wake me up.
If we are criticizing somebody, like suppose you want to save somebody, then we associating with some bad person. So if we are criticizing that person, so it is good or bad?
If you want to save somebody, and you have to criticize them, well, I would first ask, can you actually help them? That you have to first consider. Because you don't want to just point out that somebody's doing something wrong if they don't want to hear it, or they're not going to do anything about it. But if you can actually help them, then I wouldn't call it criticism. I would call it service to the devotee. I would call it devotee care. You know, if you're walking off the edge of the roof and you're not looking, and I say, hey, stupid idiot, turn around. Then I may call you a stupid idiot, but at least that caught your attention and you're still alive. So I wouldn't call that criticism per se. But there is Vaishnava etiquette also in how procedures to correct somebody, and whether that's your position or someone else's position. Okay?
Pure devotees, do they have relationships in levels? I'm close to him, I'm closer to that devotee, I'm closest to him.
Yeah, why not? That's normal. Okay, let's stop. So hot. All right, open the door. I'm falling asleep. I'm falling asleep. It wasn't this hot. You want to open that? It wasn't this hot in Mayapur. So I'm adjusting to the weather. We're going to pretend all those motorcycles are motorboats, and there's a river out here, and they're just flowing by the river. It's just so pleasing. Hear all the boats going by. You know, when you go in nature and you hear the river stream against the rocks and the birds, and you hear that sound, it's very soothing, isn't it? And you hear car sounds, it's very disturbing, isn't it? It's much different than a bird chirping, right? What?
I'm not allowed to ask good dogs.
Why don't we stop? It's been so long. We're keeping all these people here for almost 2 hours. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.